Hi, I'm Prof. T, and welcome to I Heart Academia. This video is about how to write a research paper, specifically a research paper in history. This is a video for students who have never written a research paper, and it is also a video meant to help students who have written papers before but hope to improve on the next research paper that they are writing. First, you will need a research paper topic. And the topic can be as broad as religion in 15th century England. Then you will need a question to be asked about this topic that can be answered using a specific set of primary sources. Oftentimes, you will be drawing on sources that your professor has already assigned you in class, like the life of Marjorie Kemp. Other times, you may have to go out and find your own primary sources in original research. A research question could be something like this. How does Marjorie Kemp deal with the theme of persecution in her writings? This question would lead you to read what Marjorie Kemp has written, but you can also go out there and find more information that was not assigned by your professor. Maybe information about the Lollard movement or other contextualizations that can help you understand who Marjorie Kemp was. It's typical for students to want to read what others have already written on the topic before setting out to write a research paper. And that's why students often turn to Wikipedia. Now, the reason I don't recommend Wikipedia is that Wikipedia can be edited by anyone for any reason, like them hating or loving the person that they are writing about. That's not the same thing as scholarship that has at least an ideal of being even-handed. A much better place to start would be with your lecture notes from class, your textbook, and any primary source that the professor has assigned you during the semester. Those readings, those primary sources, often have introductions written by scholars who are experts in their field and experts on that particular author or topic. So reading that introduction to the life of Marjorie Kemp would be a great place to start, in addition to going to your library and finding other books written by historians on this topic, and going online and looking for articles written by historians on this topic. What do I mean by a scholarly article? I mean an article in an academic journal which has been peer-reviewed and is written by an expert, reviewed by other experts, and approved as a piece of good scholarly writing and good research. Every field will have a variety of scholarly journals to search for articles on a particular topic. JSTOR is a great database to use that you can find by going to your library's website. Project Muse is another one, and there are many others that you will be able to search for scholarly articles. Bad authorities to turn to at the beginning of a research project would be to simply Google your research topic, or to go to a Wikipedia page, or just the internet in general to expect the internet to give you good information. Unless you find a page that is run by scholars and professors, or a YouTube video also uploaded by a scholar or a professor, these are not good places to start because they are not peer-reviewed. Ideally, your professor hopes that you will be looking at primary sources. A primary source will be from the time period that you are studying. So if you're studying 15th century England, that's when your primary source was written. It could be translated from another language like Latin or French that it was originally written in, and it can be of multiple genres. Like a primary source can be a poem, a romance, a chronicle, a saint's life, religious treatises, advice books, memoirs, letters, etc. Many professional historians, depending on the time period and place that they study, use archival sources, which are the bureaucratic detritus, what's left behind from institutions, for instance, like a state or government. These can be royal documents, official papers, bureaucratic documents, letters from one person to another or to the king himself. Archival sources can be a vast variety of genres. They can be wills, requests for favors or positions and jobs at court, contracts, criminal cases, lawsuits, inquisition cases, etc., depending on what time period and place that you are studying. Some archival manuscripts have been digitized which has really helped scholarship advance across the world. Here is an example of a website created by the Dominican Studies Institute at CUNY to help people understand paleography, the writing, the handwriting from the early modern period. So the first step in analyzing an archival source is to transcribe it, to type out what are the words in Spanish that are written on the page. For anyone hoping to do archival research in Spanish, whether for a master's thesis, dissertation, or otherwise, I highly recommend using this paleography tool created by CUNY. Now, the information that you have found, say about the life of Marjorie Kemp, in the primary sources and secondary sources that you have read, this information and the notes you've taken on that information, it becomes evidence when you use it to prove an argument. And the argument is the thesis of your research paper. It is what you are trying to show and prove with all the evidence that you list between your introduction and conclusion. The basic layout of any research paper is as follows. You have an introductory paragraph that includes a thesis statement, which is the argument of your paper as a whole. Then the body paragraphs that include citations to primary sources and perhaps also cite secondary sources. And then finally a conclusion that restates your argument and mentions the evidence that you have brought in to prove it. Now, it's important when setting off on any research paper project to have a way of organizing your materials. Some students use the note card method, which means any fact or piece of information that you find that you think is interesting or noteworthy, you write it on a note card with the entire bibliographic citation of the book you got it from on the other side of the note card. Another method would be using a moleskin notebook or other notebook to take notes on any source or book that you are reading throughout your project. This works very well for dissertations or master's theses because you can see in chronological order where you have looked for information and can follow your research project as it progresses. You can also use a Word document or Excel sheet method for gathering your information as well. As you gather this information, you should ask yourself questions. What does my evidence prove? What can I argue based on the evidence that I have? Or do I need other information before I can be confident in the answer to my question, my research question? How can I scale the confidence of my statements to the quality of the evidence I have? Many student papers that I read have the problem of arguing too much from a small amount of evidence. For instance, say you've researched Marjorie Kemp's life. Can you use her life to tell something about the entire 15th century in England? Maybe not. It's important to make sure that you're only arguing what you can based on the evidence that you actually have in front of you. You can ask yourself, would this be enough to bring charges in court? Would the evidence that I have gathered convince a jury? Or would an editor publish this journalistic piece? Do I have enough corroborating evidence? Do I have multiple independent sources on the record telling me all the same thing? There are multiple ways to build a case. You could build a case by the sheer amount of evidence or number of examples that you provide, or by the variety of types of sources of different genres, like for instance, telling the history of chivalry using romances, military manuals, writings of clerics, archival sources, etc. Another thing to do would be to analyze sources which have not been analyzed before. This is usually in archival research. Or you could ask a new question of sources that have already been analyzed by others. You could also analyze your sources using different methods than others have used. For instance, economic historians create graphs of their data to share within their papers, and cultural historians may draw on methods from anthropology, like thick description. There are many methods you can draw on in writing history, including social history, political history, etc. Your professor is hoping that you produce a piece of original research in history, whether at the undergraduate or graduate level. Original means it's with primary sources that you analyze on your own. It's your contribution to historical scholarship. Making a contribution to scholarship makes you a part of a scholarly community, and communities treat each other with respect. So you must acknowledge your debts, to say where you found any information, to say where you heard a scholarly argument, and give other scholars credit for all of their hard work. This means that you are avoiding plagiarizing your work, which is so important. To avoid plagiarism, you provide a complete citation of every book or article that you have read in the course of your research. This is an example using Chicago Manual of Style. Some scholars and professors will ask you to use other methods like MLA or APA, but this is Chicago Manual, and you can find it online by Googling Chicago Manual of Style. In addition to including a bibliography at the end of your paper, you will need to cite sources throughout your paper using footnotes. Here are footnotes 461 and 462 from something that I have written. You can see that one source is an archival document and the other is a published source. This is also using Chicago Manual of Style. I also highly recommend that you look at Mary Lynn Rampola's Pocket Guide to Writing in History, because she provides models of many different types of citations, and she also provides advice on how to write research papers. So there you have it, a brief guide on how to write a research paper. I hope that you will go see your professor who has assigned you this, and you will ask them for help in office hours, and you will plan your time well so that you have all the time you need to complete this assignment. I'm sure you'll do great.